Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of Limited Time Only. I'm your host, Spencer, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, the man who loves Daredevil more than he loves Spider-Man, Drew Walden.
I mean, if you haven't seen Daredevil yet, you have to go watch it.
I've seen the first 2 episodes of the first season, and they were good. Every time somebody asks me about it, I tell them that it reminds me of, it's like superhero Psych.
The show with the
guy that fakes to be psychic? Yeah.
Yeah, and his buddy, and I've seen 1 or 2 episodes. How does that remind you of Psych?
That was what the first 2 episodes reminded me of.
What?
He's like this lawyer dude that's like doing these investigation things, and then he's a superhero behind the scenes. It's just like Psych. Psych is like this fake, like this lawyer, this criminal investigator that's like pretends to be psychic, but behind the scenes he's something else.
Yeah, but the tone is completely different.
Sure.
I mean, tonally it's different,
That's what it reminded me of.
I can't believe you watch Daredevil and you think, oh yeah,
only the first 2 episodes. Only the first 2.
Like, if you had said, it kind of reminds me of Dexter, I'd be like, alright, yeah, I can see that,
Yeah, that's true. It reminds me of Dexter a little bit, too.
I mean, it doesn't have, the self-narration or anything like that, and, Daredevil doesn't have a family or anything, but Psych? Really? Alright.
That's what it reminded me of. I can't explain it. That's what I said to my wife. I was like, oh, that was really good. I'll probably watch the rest of that. And I still want to watch the rest of it, I just haven't yet.
Yeah, definitely watch the second season is better than the first season, but the first season is very good, and the more later you get into the season, the more, I think the better it gets, and the more exciting it gets.
Alright, well, I'll have to watch an episode or 2 today. After we start with pick 2. Before we get there, before we talk about, magical cards, don't forget to check out, us out anywhere, wherever you're listening. You can also listen on puremtgo.com, youtube.com, constructivecriticism.com, wherever you are, wherever you're listening, we appreciate it. Don't forget that you can help the show by going to patreon.com/ccmtg and becoming a patron of Constructive Criticism family. And, we appreciate everything that our patrons do. So thank you so much. All right, pick 2, Drew. So, this is the last pick 2 for the Gatewatch. Does that make you sad or happy?
Neutral.
Neutral?
Neutral. I'm really excited for Shadows over Innistrad. I love.
Oh my gosh! Guess what our pick 1 was?
What?
I've never, ever drafted this card ever. I've only played it in sealed.
Linvala?
Nissa's Judgment.
Oh, okay. All right, that's a good one.
Yeah, I've never gotten to pick that card ever. I've never opened it early enough. Oh, that's so great. All right, that was going to be part of my complaints, was that it was like my mythic uncommon. All right. All right, so we picked a... Anyway, you were saying something about Shadows of Innistrad.
Oh, yeah. No, it's awesome. The first Innistrad was awesome, and the spoilers look pretty awesome so far, so I'm pretty excited to start drafting Innistrad.
Yeah, I mean, I got to play a little bit of Constructed yesterday with some of the new cards. Matt and I recorded a testing video, and I enjoyed what I have seen. I don't really get into the limited stuff until all of the sets spoiled, and then I really dive in, and it really excites me. I think that playing limited Magic makes you more excited for new sets, because it's a whole new world you could explore instead of just part of a new world you could explore.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, because in Constructed you're well, we're gonna play, if you have a 75 card deck, we're gonna play 55 or 60 cards or whatever from the last couple sets, and then we'll add some new cards from the new set, or sometimes you get a whole new archetype when a set comes out, but it tends to be the exception rather than the rule. But yeah, in Limited, you're oh, I gotta play the whole set, I gotta see all the commons and the uncommons and the rares, and the rares you'll never play in Constructed that are awesome in Limited.
Yeah, it makes you excited for things like Core Sky Climber, right? You would never be excited about the card if you were only a Constructed player, but you could see that card as a limited player and be dude, this thing jumps up and hits stuff. That's cool.
Yep.
So, alright, so Unknown Shores is our first option for our pick 2. This card has gone up for me a lot in this set. I'm more willing to play it than I thought I would be, but I'm not taking it second pick.
Nope, not a second pick.
All right, next up we have Reality Hemorrhage. That card is a red and 1 for a devoid instant. It deals 2 damage to target creature or player. You okay picking this card this early yet, if ever?
I'm kind of. I will take it early, but that's mostly if the pack is really weak, and I'll be pretty sad if I'm taking it this early.
Next up we have Core Sky Climber, the aforementioned Core Sky Climber. It's 2 and a white for a 3/2. It's a core soldier ally. It has an activated ability that it gains flying until end of turn for a white and 1. I'm pretty excited to play this card, but I'm not taking kind of a mediocre creature this early.
No, it's definitely one of your better 3-drops in a white deck, but again, it's not a great second pick in the first pack. So
next up we have Slip Through Space. This is 1 blue for a devoid, sorcery. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card.
Yeah, pretty low on my pick order, so we're just going to shuffle this to the back.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in this one. Ancient Crab, not taking that. Of course, Scythe Master, kind of in the same camp. I like it as a 3-drop, but not taking it this early. Brute Strength. Where are you on combat tricks?
I mean, they're fine, they're reasonable. I would much rather just take a solid creature or middling to a good removal spell, pretty high over a combat trick at this point in the draft. So I like Brute Strength. I think it was one of those commons we've talked about before that is better than it looked, mostly because it allows you to do a ton of damage kind of out of nowhere that's unexpected.
Yeah, not exciting second pick though.
Nope.
Lead by example, kind of in the same category there. Netcaster Spider. 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 2/3 reach. Is this coming close to... it also has the upside if it blocks a flyer, it gets plus 2/0. Is this better than Reality Hemorrhage for you? Are you moving this up?
No, I still like, so far out of the cards you've mentioned, the 2 cards that are in the front of my mind are Reality Hemorrhage and Core Sky Climber.
Okay. Crumbling Vestige is next. Not taking that this early. Make a Stand. I thought this card was bad.
I'm trying to remember. It's
2 and a white for an instant. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain indestructible until end of turn.
Yeah, this card has been kind of... honestly, I think my initial impressions have kind of lined up where this card is. It has a lot of potential upside. Generally speaking, though, it's just going to be kind of like a mediocre combat trick.
Yep. The next card has impressed me throughout this entire set, and that is Step Glider. 4 and a white for a 2/4 flying vigilant. You can activate for a white and 1. Target creature with a 1/1 counter gains vigilance until end of turn.
Yep, this is a pretty great late game card. Basically, one thing it does is it blocks reasonably well. It is a 2/4.
I forgot to say that the creature gains flying too, by the way.
Yeah, kind of important. But it gums up attackers decently well. I mean, it's not the biggest creature ever, but it blocks, smaller creatures pretty well. And the fact that once you get to untap with it, if you have any number of cards you've supported earlier on, or you get to support any cards later, you get to start attacking in the air, and they can't really attack back because, hey, your large creatures now also have vigilance. So. Yep.
And the last card I assume you're moving Step Glider to the front, right?
Yep.
Yeah, me too. The last card in the pack, Mrs. Judgment!
Oh, well.
What?
We took one already, and it's much better than all the cards you listed, so that's an easy pick.
I've literally have 0 Nissa's Judgment on my account. On my Moto account. I've never seen one.
Well, now we have 2 in our imaginary deck.
Our deck's sweet so far.
Yep. Yeah, definitely Nissa's Judgment. I remember when we were talking about it when the set first came out, and we definitely were saying it was very powerful, but I played with it a couple times, and it is very, very, very powerful.
Yeah, I was like, this card will be good, and then I played with it in multiple sealed decks. I've gotten to play with it in sealed, and it's oh, this is really good, like really good. It's like kill your best creature and make my 2 creatures real, And it's like, why?
Yep. And it's much better than fighting. Like, it's miles ahead of fighting. Because if you have any number of other creatures that have counters, they can't, it's like almost impossible for them to stop their creature from dying, so.
Yeah, or if you have like an awakened land, like their guy is just dead.
Yeah. You're just like, alright, take 20. And the guy's like, well, can I pump my guy or kill your guy? And you're like, you can, it's not gonna do anything.
Yeah. Yep. Alright. So, biggest movers. So what is our biggest mover in the format at Common this week? Mine was just red commons. Like, I feel like I'm getting really late Goblin Free Runners and Bolter Salvos. I don't know why people think red is this bad, but like, it's not this bad. I got a 5th pick Bolter Salvo this week, or last week.
And that was in the first pack?
That was, 5th pick, first pack. I was like, well, I'm red. I'm going in. Going in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the general consensus is that red is probably the worst color in Oath, but I don't think red is as bad in Oath as green was in Triple Battle for Zendikar, right? So, it's still, if you're the only red drafter, you're still going to have a very nice, deep pool of cards to pick from because nobody's taking them.
Yeah, I mean, I gotten 5 Zados Commandos in a draft, and that's an uncommon. It's like, what is happening?
Is Zados Commando an uncommon or a common?
Oh, I put it down as my most drafted uncommon, so that I hope it's uncommon.
It is a common.
Oh, well then it actually beat out Bolter Salvo as my most drafted common.
I was gonna say, I'm like, I remember us saying that Zados Commando was,
the best red common? Yeah, I'm just stupid.
Well, I still think Bolter Salvo is better, but it's aggressively pushed on its stats for a common creature.
I actually don't know what my most I have to now look to see what my most drafted uncommon is. I could probably guess. Like,
it's not Nissa's Judgment.
It's not Nissa's Judgment. It would have been if I had ever seen one. It's probably Relief Captain. It would be my guess at what it is. But okay. It could be something stupid too. It could be something like Reckless Bushwhacker. It could be just like this stupid card that I've gotten like 1,000 times, or like Press into Service or something. Anyway, I've been getting really late, both of those cards, like, and I think I think that my favorite archetypes are all red archetypes too, and I think the reason that I've fallen that way is because of how little other people are drafting them.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, when you're open to what's being passed to you, usually you're going to be picking whatever's not being drafted. So if red is...
No, by the way, I do have the answer to what my most drafted uncommon was. So we'll get to that later. What is your biggest move this week, Drew?
Stalking Drone. So Stalking Drone was a card that when the set first came out, I was actually thought it was really strong. That's the 1 in a green for a 2/2, and you can pay a waste once per turn to give a +1/+2. So when the set first came out, I thought, all right, that's really good. It's a Grizzly Bear, which is always going to be a card you will play in a limited deck. Not exciting, but the fact that you can pay 1 mana to make it into a 3/4, I think is really powerful for a creature that cheap. Then kind of as the set developed, it started to go down a little bit, mostly because of the availability of waste mana, and now I think it's kind of like climbed back up for me, saying, yeah, Stalking Drone really is that good as an early green creature.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you can support on, and then, like, there's, like, almost no downside to just having a Bolter Salvo, or not a Bolter Salvo, a Holdout Settlement in your deck. Like,
yep.
You just have one, and then, like, when you draw it, it's just like, oh, this guy that I supported on is, like, actually just great now.
Yep, yeah, he goes from being a reasonable curve filler to a very large creature able to rumble with, 5 and 6 mana creatures.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you think? Let's move on to... Hold on one second. My computer just freaked out at me. There we go. So why did these things move for us? Like, were we underrating things? Am I overrating red cards? Like, what happened here?
Really, anytime what's happening is just you're figuring out the texture of the format. So Stalking Drone, for example, is a card that the value of it's gonna be dependent on how often you can activate its ability. If you can consistently activate a stalking drone on turn 3 when you're attacking with it after casting it on turn 2, it's going to be very powerful, right? It's very difficult for any creature to block a stalking drone when it's a 3/4 that early in the game. Conversely, if you don't have any waste mana, it's just a 2/2. It'll just be attacking as a 2/2, which is fine, but it's not very exciting. So the context of how much waste mana you have available in your deck is important.
How many do you shoot for when you draft an early stalking drone?
So stalking drone is the kind of, like you were saying, how you can just incidentally have a holdout settlement in your deck. Stalking drone for me is a card that I'm not really looking to get a ton of waste mana. If it's, say, like the only waste activated ability I have in my draft pile so far. Now, if I have a card like Prophet of Distortion, or say like Reality Smasher as an early pick, then I'm definitely looking towards getting waste mana a lot higher.
I found myself drafting holdout settlements really high. Like, I'm pretty happy taking that card 4th pick. Because I find that, like, no matter what deck I'm in, I'm going to want that. I'm going to, like, want one of those in there. And I think that, like, for me, it was kind of the exact same feeling. It's like, I don't want to be I didn't like drafting the waste decks. Like the blue-black waste. I know that deck was good, the blue-black, like, waste mana deck.
Sure.
But I didn't enjoy it very much. But what I did enjoy is, like, being able to play, like, those red activated cards. So, like, having a holdout settlement and an Unknown Shores or a Crumbling Vestige and a holdout settlement, like, it felt like I was getting more out of my picks by taking 2 lands rather than, like, some mediocre creature that it's just going to sit in my sideboard anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the ability to pick up those lands later is great. Like you said, if you're just taking a middling pick for your deck that you probably won't end up playing, it's going to be a lot better for you to have waste in your deck, especially if you are incidentally picking up cards like a couple stalking drones. So that way you can support having a creature that's going to be more powerful when they're able to, be activated, as opposed to a creature that just kind of is like, I'm just a 2/2 for 2.
Absolutely. All right. And as far as, like, the red cards go, I think that it's the exact same thing. It's like figuring out the texture of what's going on around you. And for me, it's like, I understood that green was not great in battle. Like, I mean, like we said on the goodbye show for that, like, I mean, I was drafting blue-red and black-red and blue-black and, green-white was one that... Green-white and white-red, I think, are the 2 that we ended up drafting the most. And green-white was the one that I think... No, green-white was the one I hated the most, sorry. Red-white was the one we both drafted the most in that format. And we landed upon that because green was terrible, and white was not in the Grixis color, so it was available. So that's how we ended up on that. And this format, I ended up on red because... I mean, it's just not that much worse than white, for example.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If you are noticing a trend that people don't want to draft red, that they're avoiding it, then, you're much more likely to dive in. And as the drafts tend to progress, that can definitely influence even your first picks. If you open a pack with maybe a couple cards that are really close in terms of power level, you're probably thinking, I'm going to take the red card because odds are I'm going to get past red.
I did take red cards high. I have first picked Auto Commando multiple times. Why did I think that card was an uncommon? I don't know. Anyway,
it feels like an uncommon. It has so much text.
I think that's what it is. I think that I didn't even think about it when I wrote that down. Let's move on to our goodbye for the Gatewatch show, because we do bi-weekly shows, so that means that by the next time we record it will be right during or right after pre-release. So let's do this. So our feelings of Go Through the Gatewatch as a whole. I put down that I really enjoyed it. I did. I enjoyed this format. I thought it fun. Like, but I don't know. It kind of like got boring for me. By the end of it, I don't know what it was. I know some people are still really liking it, but like, I enjoyed it. Like, it was a fun format, and like, I think it reminds me of like, I don't know, cause like when I think of like formats I really enjoyed, like I enjoyed like Triple Ravnica, and then I hated Triple Gate Crash. And then, like, the next format, the Dragon's Maze, was like, okay. And, like, I really, really, really enjoyed Battle for Zendikar. And I think the reason I got bored of this one is it was kind of a letdown. Like, I wasn't really done drafting Battle for Zendikar, and I was wishing that I could do Battle for Zendikar drafts more often at the end of this format.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think part of the reason is that I don't think Oath is quite as deep in terms of its complexity as Battle for Zendikar was. Basically cards are tend to be more valuable based on raw power rather than synergies. There's a little bit of synergies going on. And the thing that I mentioned is you do have to keep an eye out for waste mana. Do I need waste mana to fuel my cards or whatever? But outside of that, cards tend to just be valuable based on pure power. And those formats can get a little stale a little more quickly than the more intricate formats. Because the cool thing about intricate formats is like, it's crazy like how some limited formats you can continue to have archetypes that continue to like kind of like pop up, that you didn't know existed before. Right. And I've seen that in formats, and Oath just didn't really have that. Oath was just like, just draft whatever the powerful cards are and just build whatever the best 2-color deck you drafted was. So,
yeah, it was still fun. I got to learn like a little bit about like the power level of things like support was a surprise to me and things like that. But it's like, well, once I figured out that support was good and waste were easy to get, like, there just wasn't a lot to figure out.
Yeah, those two, and then I believe allies was
Cohort,
probably the other thing. Yeah, and allies is kind of obvious, right? Like, all right, I just take cards with allies in their creature type. So
yeah. What about you? How did you feel?
So I thought initially the interesting concept was waste mana, because it's kind of like they introduced a new color. Not exactly, obviously. I think it's their way to cheat introducing a new color into the game without having to actually do it, because I seriously doubt that they will ever have a new color for Magic. So it was interesting having this kind of different color, this different mode, but I think in the long run for Limited, it just ended up not being that interesting, because it was just like, all right, I have some cards with some activated abilities, I'm going to pick up some waste mana and then use them. I think it's kind of a cool concept to explore for Constructed. I definitely think that. It's kind of cool to think to yourself, all right, what cards create waste mana and what cards don't? And so all of a sudden cards like, the Painlands from Magic Origins go from being probably pretty mediocre pretty mediocre mana fixers and Constructed to being cards that people are playing 4 of, so that way they can cast Thought-Knot Seers and Reality Smashers in their 3-color decks. So,
yep. Yeah, I thought that it was interesting. Like, when we were evaluating the sets, like, I don't know how often I'm going to be able to play this card.
Yeah, exactly. If I take a Reality Smasher first pick, because Reality Smasher, when you can cast it, is very powerful, but can I cast this reliably? Is kind of the question. And I think as the limited set evolved, you were able to figure out, it's actually much easier to cast cards, and especially powerful spells, because one thing is like, you have cards like Scion Summoner and Eldrazi Sky Spawner, which generate Scions, which give you waste mana, but it's a one-shot waste mana, which are good to be using on expensive creatures like Reality Smasher, but are not good to be used for activated abilities like Prophet of Distortion, right?
Right.
you're like, hey, I'm going to activate my Prophet Distortion, but I have to use a Scion to do it, you're kind of just cashing in a one-shot effect as opposed to, hey, I have a holdout settlement in my lands, and I can draw an extra card every turn.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to what your favorite deck was to draft. Mine wasn't even close. It was green red. It wasn't like I jumped on that Saddleback Legac and rode it all the way through the format.
Good old Bloodbraid Elf. I mean,
I feel like you're gonna make fun of me for saying that forever.
Yep, absolutely.
Man, this will be so great for my whole life. But no, I think that like Boulder Salvo, Zato's Commando, Saddleback Legac, like a lot of people like the black-white deck because they're like, oh, it's just like this deck of commons that you can build that's like really good, and I'm like, yeah, that's why I like green-red. Like same reason.
Yep, I mean it's just different, right? You're just instead of sitting back and cohorting a bunch, you're supporting a bunch of efficient creatures and attacking. So
yeah, I'm putting counters on my stalking drones and my Zato's Commandos with my Bloodbraid Elves. So
you know, I cast this Bloodbraid Elf that doesn't have haste for some reason. I drew a lead by example. Haste. No, you drew a lead by example. That's the card you draw, right? With
oh, sure. I guess that's true. Or yeah. But no, I think that green red was like this deck that I don't know, the first time that I played it, it's like I just thought that like Boulder Salvo was like one of my favorite cards. And you know, I don't know. I found Surge very interesting in these style of decks. Because, like, a lot of people are like, oh, you can't play, like, Surge cards in green red. And it's like, no, you can. Like, you have Binds of the Recluse. You have tons of 2-drops. Like, it's so easy to play, like, a 2-drop in a Boulder Salvo or in turn 4 and, like, then attack with the other guys. It was just such a powerful play. It was something that I love doing.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with even playing, like, a 3 or a 4-drop and playing Boulder Salvo. I mean, you know, you don't have to play Boulder Salvo on turn 2. You can play it on turn 5 or 6, so.
Yeah. So that was my most drafted deck. I really enjoyed it, to the point where I was forcing it at the end. Like, I just liked that deck. I could force it pretty easily, and people would be like, "Oh, I'm not gonna fight over red with anybody, so you can have it." I'm like, yes.
Yeah. My most drafted color was white. I drafted quite a few ally decks early on in the format: white-black, white-red. And then even as the format continued to evolve, I still found myself drafting white, taking isolation zones early, even drafted like green-white once, was decent. And I think the allies decks were even still something that I was, you know, picking up, even later in the format. If people aren't drafting it, you jump in, you get a really powerful deck. It's pretty great. You have access to 2 of the best common removal spells, Isolation Zone and Oblivion Strike. Sorry, Boulder Salvo, you're cool, but you can't just flat out, you know, remove anything.
Kill a guy.
Yep. So, so it was white for me.
Cool. So just white decks at large. What was your least favorite deck to draft? You can go first.
So my least favorite deck to draft was Blue-Red Surge. And I think the reason is that it's a deck that it sounds really cool. I think when you talk about it, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to play these really cheap spells and just kind of like explode this one turn. But what ends up happening is that like, there's not really a payoff is the problem. You're playing, you know, 3/3 flyers or 3/2 menaces or maybe a Boulder Salvo. And these are all fine cards on their own, but trying to construct a deck out of playing them, a bunch of them on one turn, it just doesn't really work out. I think it's the kind of deck that if you get the right rares or mythics, you can have a pretty good deck. So basically you have to be lucky, you have to open the right cards, and then you have to hope you get the right cards passed to you. The problem is that a lot of the cards that are really, really big payoffs in the Surge deck, Crush the Tentacles and is it Follow the Titans? Is the red?
It's the red rare.
Yeah, the red rare. Those cards are going to be picked up likely early anyways by other players, even in their non-surge decks. Because Crush the Tentacles is the kind of card that even if you can't play it until like turn 7, like if you hold a 2-drop and wait until turn 7 to play the 2-drop plus Crush the Tentacles, it's still such a powerful effect that people are going to be wanting to take it, as opposed to you having, 3 Bone Saws in your deck and hoping to get like a Crush the Tentacles. So that was just kind of my impression of the deck.
I drafted that deck a few times. It was actually like it was the first deck I drafted ever, and it was cool. But I think that the thing with that deck was, and I think that a lot of people weren't doing. I think that they were just doing it wrong. I think that you want to do Mara and Tinkler in that deck so that you got payoffs for your Expedites and your Slip Through Spaces rather than just your Surge cards. But that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Let's go on to most drafted uncommon. So I looked it up, and it was Seed Guardian, but it was not by a lot. I did not have I couldn't find, like, an uncommon that I drafted a ton of. I had a few Seed Guardians, though, and that looks like the most drafted one. I was impressed with Seed Guardian. I thought that when I initially saw the set, I thought this card was going to be like a bomb. And it was still good, but stupid Oblivion Strike made it a little bit worse than I thought it would be.
Yeah, both Oblivion Strike and Isolation Zone. I think I had to make it drop down a little bit in value, but still, obviously, just a great rate on a green creature.
Yeah, I still think that there were quite a few flyers. I think that's one of the reasons that I liked Vines of the Recluse so much. That's pretty high on my drafted commons also. Like, I just think that there was a lot of flying creatures.
Yeah,
At least I felt that way. It felt like the ground wasn't gummed up as much as I thought it would be.
Yeah, there's a reasonable amount of flying creatures, so definitely having the ability to defend yourself is good. And Seed Guardian generally is going to be bigger than any flying creature, especially the common ones.
What was your most drafted uncommon, Drew?
My most drafted uncommon was Allied Reinforcements.
Wow, really?
Not exciting, not splashy, but the thing with Allied Reinforcements, it's the kind of uncommon that will get passed to you a lot, right?
It's true.
It's not the kind of uncommon that people are windmill slamming first pick. They'll often be looking at the pack and they'll maybe find something else. And certainly people will be taking commons over it. You'll be taking Isolation Zone.
Yeah.
Oblivion Strike over it.
That was one of my worries. I thought, like, when I was looking, I'm like, it's probably going to be something for me, like the stupid Toll Collector. I was like, I've had so many of those sitting in my sideboard, it's probably that. Or like Reckless Bushwhacker, like a card that's like, oh, I guess I'm taking this. Like,
yeah, Allied Reinforcements I think is a little bit better than like Bushwhacker, for example. It's the kind of card that I don't mind taking. It's one
that you can be passed and would take, so it kind of falls under like a perfect storm of a card that could be your most drafted.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's great in the Allies decks, and it's just generally good in a white deck. I think it was a little bit better than what people gave it credit for when the set first came out. Just, I mean, two creatures for 4 mana is still a really good deal. No, as long as they're not like 1/1s or anything like that, 2/2s still affect the board reasonably well. And like we said earlier, even in this show, support is a mechanic that's, pretty common, especially in white, and so having more creatures on the board to support with is pretty good. So yeah, I think Allied Reinforcements is one of those cards that's like not super exciting, it's not splashy or flashy or anything like that, but it fills a solid role in a lot of decks, and it's a decent amount of power in one card, so.
Awesome. Let's move on to our most drafted common. So mine is wrong. This would switch. I should have known this when I had more Zapdos Commandos than I did Boulder Salvos. Yeah, mine is Zapdos Commando. I had a lot of those. I mean, I had 5 in one draft the other day. Like I have a lot of Zapdos Commandos.
Yep, pretty like.
I actually don't think that it's even like a perfect storm. I actually think I was just taking that card higher than everybody else.
I mean, it looks like an uncommon. Like, literally every single time I look at Xados Commander, I'm like, oh, it's an uncommon, right? And then, like, you see the little black symbol, and you're like, really? That's a common? Like, it's a really push to drop for being a common, so.
Yeah. So that's I took that card second, first pick before, like, and I'm not even unhappy that I ever did that, so.
My most drafted common is Isolation Zone.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean,
Did you never, ever pass one?
No, like, you basically just never pass it, right? Like, I mean, you're always taking it high, and, yeah, and I've been past them a couple times too. I find that Oblivion Strike, I think, gets drafted more than Isolation Zone does.
It's true. It does.
I don't know if that is because of Oblivion Strike's a little bit easier to cast. I don't think that's the case. My guess is that people, for some reason, just like to be in black more than white. I don't know. But, yeah, I drafted Isolation Zone quite a bit.
Is there anything in this format that you're going to miss going into the next one? Like, is there something that you'll look back on and be like, man, I missed that part of Magic?
I mean, so one thing I'm never really sure on is having really powerful removal spells at common, like Isolation Zone and Oblivion Strike.
Hold on. I disagree with this completely. If this is what they're giving us at common, that's totally fine. They're 4 mana.
That's fair. I mean, that's definitely true. They're not like Doomblades. They're not instants either. They are sorceries, so they can't like wreck you in the middle of combat or anything like that. But they do I guess this is more of like kind of like a Magic philosophy question in general. You know, do you want there to be common unconditional removal spells that are at a certain price point?
So would you rather them have neither of these? Let's say that neither of these exist. Mm-hmm. And instead we got Doomblade and Path to Exile at uncommon. Or rare, even.
So what I was going to say is I think there's kind of like two sides to this, right? So on the one hand, it can be really frustrating, you know, when you when you play a creature that you're hoping lives, and it's like a big creature or whatever, and then your opponent is just like, nope, I just have this common removal spell, but get it out of here or whatever. But on the other hand, you also don't just want to flat out lose to a creature your opponent plays that you just can't deal with. So it's kind of that tension, I think, in that design space or development space where do we want to have a really powerful effect like this at common? And I've noticed the trend has been in the last, several years is it seemed I had been kind of under the impression that 5 mana was kind of, it seemed like that was kind of where they were saying we're happy with unconditional removal at 5 mana. And you see that with a lot of the black common removal spells, not in this set, but in the sets before it, like Magic Origins. What was the name of the 5 mana removal spell? I cannot remember it.
I want to say Demon's Grasp, but I think that's in this set.
Yeah, in the one I'm talking about, it was the one that was like destroy target creature, and then I think you gain 2 life if you have
there was 2, right? Or was that a different set? The one that was, because there was one that made that, like, if you had a zombie, something else happened.
Cruel Revival. But that one, that was in Origins. That one was uncommon, though. That was destroy target non-zombie creature, and you return a zombie to your hand from your graveyard.
What a weird card.
It's from Onslaught, so it was kind of like the big tribal removal spell. Anyways, so my point is that, like, it seems to me that the development is whatever is saying we like 5 mana unconditional removal spells at common, or that's where we feel they're safe or whatever. But then, if that's the philosophy, Isolation Zone and Oblivion Strike feel like they're slightly pushed, right? Because
Necromancer's Summons? No, not that one. Sorry, I'm trying to find it for you.
No, that's fine. But it feels like the 4 mana unconditional removal spells are slightly pushed because it exiles them, and exiling creatures is better than putting them in your opponent's graveyard. It hits anything.
So the card you're talking about is Unholy Hunger, and I'm actually very interested by this conversation because to me, what Wizards has shown me with Unholy Hunger, Cruel Revival, Isolation Zone, and Oblivion Strike is that we're willing to pay any amount of mana to kill a big thing.
Not any amount.
It feels that way though, right? Because like in the world that I grew up in Magic, like I got Murder, I got Doomblade, I got like.
Well, compare it to Scour from Existence, right? I mean, Scour from Existence, also like Oblivion Strike, flat out removes any creature, but it costs 7 mana. It's really, really difficult to have a 7 mana spell that isn't doing something insanely powerful. That's just like a one.
Did you have Scour from Existence in your decks though?
I have once or twice, yeah. But the difference is that Scour from Existence is not a first pick card, right? I don't think there's any format where you're going to first pick a Scour.
But you didn't first pick Unholy Hungers either, right?
Origins was a little bit different, but you would definitely first pick Oblivion Strike, right?
Right, but if this format was as fast as Origins, would you have been first picking Oblivion Strikes?
I mean, see, this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, the farther down you go on the mana curve.
And that format had suppression bonds. It's not like it didn't have basically the same card.
Yeah, I mean, suppression bonds was still a reasonably high pick in that format, right? So the other thing I was going to say was, like, Origins was kind of like a really fast core set, and core sets don't exist anymore. But like M15, for example, you had Flesh to Dust, which is another 5 mana destroy target creature card, and Flesh to Dust was a really high pick.
Sure.
And so obviously it's going to be format dependent, but I think a card like Scour from Existence is, I think, a good example of a card that will not be a high pick because it is so expensive. So I do think there's a breaking point where you say it doesn't matter that this flat out kills any creature, it's still just too expensive for what it does. So I definitely think that it's interesting to me that that they're willing to kind of play with that, and I definitely think they probably will never ever have, definitely not at common. I don't think there will ever be a card like Murder, and certainly not Doomblade. I think it's the common slot again. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm not a developer. I don't do that kind of stuff. But definitely the last 2 or 3 years, that seems to be.
Do you think that there's just out of curiosity, because this is very interesting to me, do you think that we saw, M12, M13, M11, and, all of these Doomblades, Lightning Bolt, Shocks, we saw that, and then later we saw Murder, and then we saw 5 mana Murder, and now we see. And, we saw that for, I think, 2 years. Like you said, they were all 5 mana, and now they're back to 4 mana. Do you think that it's an ebb and flow? Do you think that it's, okay, we're going to push, bring back, push, bring back, to, keep balance? Do you think that maybe we do see Murder next time?
My guess is if they reprint Murder, it'll be uncommon. That would be my guess. My reasoning is that, I'm thinking the reason development doesn't have, or had those core sets where they had such cheap removal spell is they were probably kind of, it's that whole being resistant to change, right? For example, Mana Leak had been kind of in the core set since 8th edition. It had kind of been like a staple, and basically what happened was, way back in Magic's, way back in the day or whatever, I'm dating myself a little bit, but you had really powerful cards in Magic's history. You had cards like Counterspell, right? Blue, counter target spell. No way Counterspell ever gets reprinted in any standard set, right? I mean, I don't think that will ever happen again. But that Counterspell was a staple in Magic for a long time, and it was in core sets, and it was a common in core sets. And eventually, developers said, all right, Counterspell is a little too strong. So let's scale it back just a bit and let's have Mana Leak, right? And they thought that Mana Leak was fine, right? Because Mana Leak is the kind of card that you can quote unquote play around. You can wait to have 3 mana up to be able to play a spell to pay for Mana Leak. And so Mana Leak was in a core set all the way up until, when did they stop reprinting it? Was it
M12 or M13?
Yeah, so they finally said, all right, little too powerful too. 2-mana counterspells, just unconditional, a little too strong. We're gonna, take it out. So I think the counterspell, the mana leak, is a good example of that whole, like, we're slowly decreasing the power of certain spells, but it's something that happens over time. And I know the whole New World Order thing happened, but even in, like, M10, you had, like, Doomblade at common. And it's hard, I think, for them to be like, all right, we have Doomblade at common and we're going to have a core set, let's have Doomblade at common. And that just kind of continues to happen over time. And so I think you kind of see that evolution of, like, all right, Doomblade's a common. All right, it's probably a little too good. Let's make a 3-mana removal spell. And that's where Murder came in. And then they kind of, in these last 2 years or 3 years or whatever, now we're seeing, like, 4 and 5 mana spells being the quote-unquote unconditional removal spells. And even the red removal spells I'm finding are getting a little more conditional, a little bit less powerful than, say, Lightning Strike or...
Man, yeah, I miss me some Lightning Strike in Standard. Like, I never thought that would be the thing that I would say, right? Like, there were times where Incinerate was in Standard, and I was like, I'm not playing that. That's stupid.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh my gosh, can I just have a Lightning Strike? Or, right? I mean, we had 6 months without Shock in the last year, and we're about to have it again. Like, we don't even have Shock.
Yeah, and that's crazy to me, because the thing is, like, even when we have Shock, like Wild Slash, for example,
it's
like,
not even played that as much.
Yeah, it's such a variable card, right? Sometimes it's great, when you have Goblin Rabble-Masters running rampant, Wild Slash is pretty good, but when the format is Mana Striders and Siege Rhinos, you're like, yeah, I don't really like this card very much, so, yeah, I think the removal thing, I think, is one of the most interesting. I don't know if it's not talked about, but it's definitely one of those things that, like, people I don't think are really cognizant of how much common and kind of also a little bit uncommon removal has changed over the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, or whatever.
I think that the most common talking point is, no, this is what we get now, and it's like, well, hold on, why do we get that? And we don't talk about why we get it.
Well, I mean, the reason why you don't get it is because you don't want... I can see the reasoning behind it. You don't want cards like Doomblade because, not that you don't want cards like Doomblade.
They've given us ultimate price
Sure.
in sets where ultimate price isn't good. I expect that they'll give us Doomblade the next time black aggressive decks are good. Like, they give it to us in times where it's not that great, which is kind of weird. It's like, why are you teasing me?
Yeah, I think from a limited perspective, though, playing in a set where Doomblade exists can be really frustrating, right? Because your opponent has 2 mana up and they have a black spell. Can you ever play a combat trick into that? That may be part of the frustration, right?
Sure.
Whereas a card like, even like Flesh to Dust, like, okay, they left 5 mana up, my brights are on, I'm well aware they probably have Flesh to Dust, as opposed to, if they want to play a creature, they probably have to play a creature and can't leave Flesh Dust mana up. And so it makes playing combat tricks much less scary into that open mana. And certainly for new players, I think playing versus cards like Doomblade in a pre-release or a release event can be really frustrating, right? Like, oh man, I have this cool combat trick. I'm gonna like try and beat my opponent with it, and then your savvy opponent who drafted 3 Doomblades goes, no, I'm just gonna stop you or whatever. As opposed to, all right, sure, you Oblivion Strike my best creature or whatever. Still kind of a letdown, but at least, you still have your combat trick in your hand or whatever. So I think I kind of get that. Maybe that's kind of the direction that they're going. Again, I may be reading too much into it, and you may be right. They may be willing to kind of cycle removal spells based on the particular removal spell's strength in any given format.
Yeah, I mean that part could be true, but that doesn't answer like I think that what you're saying, and what I think that it might be how we remember Oath of the Gatewatch too, is, man, that really sucked that I had to pass all those rates to take those Oblivion Strikes and Isolation Zones.
Sure. And that I think that happens in a decent amount of sets with unconditional removal like that. So Yeah, it's kind of interesting to me that, to me, Isolation Zone and Oblivion Strike kind of are maybe not the marquee cards, but they're kind of the cards that just kind of define a lot of times where your draft ends up going, as opposed to the waste mana mattering so much.
I think that I probably have a lot of Oblivion Strikes in my account that I wish that I didn't have to have drafted.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a powerful spell. I mean, but yeah, I think 4 is, cause I mean, definitely, like, if it was 3 mana, it'd be really powerful, right? Like, it would be absurdly powerful, almost constructed playable, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you had a 3 mana sorcery, exile target creature, that's very, if not flat out constructed playable.
I mean,
Stasis
Snare literally sees constructed play, so.
Yeah.
I mean, that one has flash, but.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very much pushing a constructed playable card, at least in this, I would think in like these kind of standard formats. So it definitely seems like 4 mana is right at the right point in limited. It's very powerful in limited. But it's not, I don't think it's,
Do you remember when we had Condemn and didn't play it? Man,
oh man, when was the last time Condemn was in Standard?
It was in Standard with Oust, so Rise of Eldrazi Standard.
Okay.
And we didn't play because we had Oust.
Yeah, I mean, but
and then Dismember. Oh my gosh.
Was Dismember legal when Rise was legal?
Yeah, so Dismember, so Rise of the Eldrazi was the set after World Wake. So Stoneforge Mystic and Dismember got to play together for 3 months.
Okay, yeah, that's right, because it was Zendikar, Scars of Mirrodin was the block, or the blocks. Yeah, okay, yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Dismember. What were some? I mean, Doomblade was in those sets, right? Like,
yeah, and I think that you know when when you look back on it too, were the Doomblade Lightning Bolt sets that fun to draft? No.
I mean that's also partially because that's just, I've never liked core sets. I know some people that do, but mostly they're just vanilla creatures. You know, you're just like, yeah, I got some 2/2 flyers and some 3/3.
Oh man, did you not enjoy 8th edition drafts on Moto?
I did not do any 8th edition drafts, but I remember having decently fond memories of 8th edition, but I was much younger then, so Magic, you know, it's one of those things where like Magic is new for you, and you know, it's like I always say, like, I liked the Onslaught limited format, but I don't think the Onslaught limited format was probably that great of a limited format in terms of like an objective view, but it was the set that I first started drafting, so it has I have fond memories of it. So it's kind of similar with like, you know, 8th edition. It was, I think, one of the first core sets I was drafting, so I'm like, oh yeah, it's a lot of fun, and in reality, it's just not quite as fun as you would think it would be.
So last question for you, Drew. It's 3 years from now, today. 3 years, so on, you know, March 22nd, 2019, Travis Padilla walks up to you with a box of Oath of Gatewatch and a box of Battle for Zendikar and says, let's draft. Do you do it?
Yeah. I mean,
I would just say, can we just draft the battle?
Yeah. If it's free and he really wants to, yeah, I'll do it. But yeah, it's not a set I'm really gonna go out of my way to try and draft. So.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I probably would take the battle box and draft that. But Oath was, I don't know, it was fun, but like, I'm excited for Shadows and to move on.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. It feels like there needs to be another set though. Am I the only one that's feeling that way? Yeah, like I was thinking about it. I'm like, oh man, Shadows over Innistrad's coming out. I'm like, are we already done with the Eldrazi? Are we done? Is that it? We're off of that plane now or whatever.
I don't know, man. I see a lot of tentacles in this art. We might not be done with the Eldrazi just.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I guess because I'm used to like a full year of a block, right? Because it's like you have like the block, like the 3 block sets, and you have a core set in between those block sets. You have a full year exploring the block, and now we have 6 months, right, of exploring the block. So, yeah, it definitely feels like we have not.
It feels fast. It feels like, I mean, we did miss like something like 3 weeks. So we missed like 2 episodes of podcasting for this set. But it's episode 28, right? Right now. And it was episode 23 or 22 that was Goodbye to Battle.
Yeah, I mean, that contributes to it, but yeah, just I think the general time factor. It's been 6 months as opposed to a year. I mean, it's completely cut in half from what we're used to with limited sets. I wonder if maybe 9 months is the right time frame, but maybe that's just me. So I don't know. But yeah, I'm super. Every time I look at like the spoilers for Innistrad, I'm like, oh man, all these cards look so sweet. Like,
yeah, that's true. They do. They look super sweet, and I'm excited to get to draft some. I mean, Innistrad is was just a great limited format.
Oh yeah, I mean, graveyards are always kind of like I think in limited, anytime you can have a fun graveyard set. I guess Odyssey wasn't. I've heard mixed things about Odyssey, but like I feel like anytime you can be interacting with your graveyard in limited, I think it's a lot of fun because I think you can do a lot of creative things. I think it makes certain cards a lot better. Like what was the card in this set? Was it Corpse Churn? Is that the name of the black card? Like, you know, Corpse Churn is the kind of card that in this set, it doesn't really, it's not that exciting, right? Like it's just, 2 mana, Brave's dead. But in a set like Shadows, that's the kind of card that, you know, you're like, oh man, I kind of want to play these cards in my deck because they are an enabler and they are also a little bit of an Aldemari's Call, kind of, right? Like, you know, it's almost like a tutor for any creature. So I really like sets where cards like that can really be a big role player and are exciting to play with, as opposed to a set, you know, like Oath of the Gatewatch, where, alright, whatever the card is that affects the board, or, you know, is a powerful spell, those are the cards I'm going to play, as opposed to, you know, doing fun things like interacting with your graveyard, so.
Awesome. Well, that is it for this week. We didn't do the How You Build It because, well, it's the last episode. So why? What? I mean, yeah. But we will be doing How Would You Build It. It'll go up on constructivecriticism.com and in the Constructive Criticism Facebook group. So check those out. That will start probably on the uncommon on the common show. So we'll be doing the uncommon set review. Where we just rate all the uncommons, and then on the common show, we will ask you guys how you would build it. So in 2 episodes, we'll start that up again. Shout-outs, Drew. Anybody you want to shout out?
I'm gonna give a shout out to Aaron Marinaka. Mostly, this is kind of like, this isn't anything specific, but it's more, Aaron's always super nice. He's a super friendly Magic player. And he is really great at when I need a constructed deck, at getting me a constructed deck to play. So shout out to him. And he's the kind of player that I wish more Magic players were like. He's really friendly to new players. He's willing at, you know, casual events to let players take things back, that kind of thing. So he's just an overall awesome Magic player and a great guy.
Yeah, he has signed a Mirage Forest for me the other day.
Oh, that's nice.
I love trolling him about that. I don't think he likes it very much. I think he's like, this is not funny, Spencer. But I enjoyed it. I have a Mirage Forest that I'm sure that I'll play against him in a draft sometime. Oh man. Yeah, shout out to you, Drew. This podcast has been really fun for me since we started to back up after that little break. I thought the last 2 episodes were like pretty good, and I'm excited to be doing this moving forward. And then shout out to everybody who's checked out the Patreon page at patreon.com/ccmtg. And shout out to whoever's listening. Thanks, guys. Like, this podcast has been so inconsistent that I'm surprised that we get the number of listeners that we do. Hopefully, we can stay on this every other week streak and just keep it going. And we'll see you guys all in 2 weeks.
Yep. See you guys later.